that. So for our plenary address, we have one of the most productive and maybe one of the most famous researchers of De La Salle University. And he's also the Vice President for Research and Innovation. So please join me in welcoming Professor Dr. Raymond Gerard Tan.
First of all, I want to say congratulations to Professor Hazel Viana for bringing this together, despite the unfortunate weather events. I'm not a philosopher myself. I'm an engineer, a bit of a techie, but I appreciate the thinking process that goes into the discipline. And to a large extent, I subscribe to the idea that we are all in academia thinkers, and we need to understand the full ramifications of whatever work we do, whether it's computer science or engineering. I myself was a beneficiary half a lifetime ago of British Council support, which helped shape my career. So I'm here to support this event. I have a video lecture prepared, but I hope to engage the young philosophers in a conversation afterwards. So that is all for now. Please have a look at the lecture and let's have a conversation afterwards. I am Professor Raymond Tan. I'm the current Vice President for Research and Innovation of De La Salle University. First off, let's define research. The commonly used definition is that it is the process of creation which abides by the systematic norms of any given discipline. And the purpose is simply to advance the state of human knowledge. The talk is organized into 4 parts. And we will begin with a discussion of the big picture, the philosophical underpinnings of research as a human activity. I think it's essential that we begin with a product that we're all familiar with, and I thought Google would be an excellent topic to begin with. Google, of course, is one of the world's major tech giants, and one of its early core products was a search engine that outperformed all the rest. This was about 20 plus years ago when it happened. And of course, now Google has diversified to the point of providing all kinds of services and hosting other platforms such as YouTube. So it's quite likely that sometime earlier today you have already used Google products, either for work or for pleasure. What many of us don't know very clearly is that Google itself is the product of a computer science work by a couple of graduate students in Stanford University. Sergey Brin and Larry Page developed the so-called PageRank algorithm, which was a way to organize web searches back in the early days of the internet. This is the actual paper that documents the algorithm itself, and obviously in less than 3 decades this became the nucleus for a worldwide enterprise that has changed the way we live, for better or for worse. I would argue mostly for the better. This diagram shows the symbiosis that occurs within a research ecosystem consisting of researchers on the left, government at the top, industry at the bottom, and of course front and center, the general public, which are the ultimate beneficiary of all this work. Now, research is about advancing the state of knowledge, and the other players support this through, in the case of the government, through research grants and various resources, including scholarships, and also support for activities such as workshops, as a way to seed the early phases of the research activity. Industry plays the role of translating research findings into actual products and services once they reach a certain stage of maturity. And in effect, there's a certain handover from government support to industry support with some overlap as the research matures. And again, ultimately, the beneficiary here should be the general public. This ecosystem, of course, works to various degrees, and in a developing country such as the Philippines, you might argue that this is not quite as mature as we would like it to be. Having seen this evolve over the past 3 decades, I would say that the current state is definitely much better than it was, say, in the year 2000. So we are on an uphill trend. Now, let's switch gears and talk about universities. Universities exist for 3 reasons. Number 1 is education. Number 2 is research. And number 3 is variously known as social engagement or extension or outreach. So it is about transferring knowledge to students, advancing the frontiers of knowledge through research, and using that knowledge as basis for creating social good through extension activities. As a result of this 3-way mandate of universities, the international norms for evaluating the performance of universities don't focus primarily on classroom teaching. In fact, if you look at arguably the most prestigious of all university rankings, Times Higher Education has a complex set of criteria, of which more than 60% have to do with research, whether it's research resources or research productivity or research influence. Nearly 2/3 of the score is based on research. And what this tells us is it's the research, the capability to advance the frontiers of knowledge that separates the great universities from the also-rans. And from the context of national development, I think it's instructive for us in the Philippines to look a little bit to the west, to Vietnam, a country which in the span of just a little bit more than 5 decades went from the devastations of extended civil war that ended only in 1975 to the point of being an economic miracle that's able to manufacture their own electric cars, for example, and seemingly are on the cusp of becoming a modern knowledge-based economy. It is also visible that there's a strong correlation between the development of Vietnam, especially in the past few years, with the ascent of their various universities in globally competitive international rankings. So that goes hand in hand with national development. And if we were to compare the cumulative production of research in Vietnam as compared to the Philippines, 2 countries with approximately the same population and the same level of economic development, what we've seen is in recent years they have doubled what we're able to produce. And the gap seems to be widening. So this is certainly partly a cause for alarm, but partly instructive in telling us what research can do to help build a better future for our country. Speaking of country, we then shift to the Philippine context. In the Global Innovation Index rankings, and this is there's a small typo there, this should be 2025, the Philippines ranks in the 2nd quartile of countries that are ranked, 130 plus countries. But we actually lag behind in many of the important research metrics. For example, we are in the 3rd quartile in R&D expenditure, and in terms of research output, we're actually in the bottom 10% of the countries listed in the Global Innovation Index. As a result, there have been plenty of government initiatives in different agencies to be able to increase both the productivity of our research universities and also to increase the level of influence and impact of the work. For example, the CMO 15 of the Commission on Higher Education mandates research outputs for master's and PhD students at different levels in an effort to internationalize the competency norms of our graduate programs. So this has been in effect for many years, and there have been recent updates, but this is certainly a logical step in the right direction. The other government agency which has played a major role in advancing research is the Department of Science and Technology, through which a lot of STEM funding, and in fact funding for non-STEM in the social sciences as well, non-STEM disciplines, are coursed. So public funding is transferred into grants, which are then given to universities whose goal is to translate these resources into knowledge goods that can be used by the Philippines for future development. And of course, De La Salle University has been the recipient of many of these grants to the tune of in excess of 1 billion pesos to date. There is also a practical reason for doing all of this, and that is that there's a strong correlation between the research capabilities of universities and the employability of their graduates. 5 years ago, a team from De La Salle University used machine learning techniques to analyze patterns in the data of the QS rankings data of universities throughout ASEAN, and we did find a very strong correlation between the employment prospects of graduates on one hand and research on the other hand. And the other strong influence, it turns out, is the international outlook of a university. So there is that very practical reason, and our students are actually stakeholders, if anything, at least as beneficiaries of our research activities through reputation building. Now, let's talk about the case of De La Salle University in particular as an example of a private Philippine higher education institution that has made commitments to become research-oriented despite the constraints of the Philippine environment. Let's recall once again that Times Higher Education leans heavily on research metrics to evaluate universities. DLSU in 2018 became the first private university in the Philippines to be ranked by Times. We continue to be ranked in the 1501 plus bracket of Times Higher Education, which I would emphasize actually lists only the top 5% universities in the world. So even though that list contains 2,000 institutions, that 2,000 is actually the top 5% of higher education institutions. We also perform very well in different subject level rankings, including arts and humanities, as you can see here. And this is because of our commitment to research. We recently crossed a landmark statistic of 10,000 Scopus Index publications throughout the history of DLSU, contributed by more than 5,000 researchers and authors through the years. 80% of that 10,000 came just in the past decade, a period of rapid growth in our history. And we continue this commitment partly for the institution, but partly to help develop the Philippines as well. Central to this effort would be human resources. Research University is only as good as its researchers, and these are, of course, faculty members as well as students that they mentor. And of course, we have physical and financial resources as well that are used to support these people. So I consider my colleagues to be the most fundamentally important asset of this university, and therefore we invest in their talent development. My job as many years ago, in fact, before I stepped in, this was done by my predecessor, was to reorganize the university so that we actually have departments, which we call research centers, which provide a home for faculty members, not for their teaching duties, but for running their various projects, including this workshop that we're having today. If we look at our performance in Times Higher Education, again, bearing in mind that these 2,000 universities are in the top 5% worldwide, we are roughly between the third and fourth quartile of this top 5% bracket The black dot here is De La Salle University, and we see the interquartile ranges via these box and whisker plots. And we can see the metrics range from research productivity all the way to research influence. But there are other factors, including, for example, research co-authored with international collaborators as evidence of international outlook of a university. What we've also done in recent years is understand our role in helping lead the Philippines forwards. And it's instructive to note that even though we aspire for world-class standing, there's a realistic ladder of progression which begins with the ASEAN benchmarks. So, what do we have here? De La Salle University has consistently contributed about 1/10 of the entire Philippines research output based on Scopus data. Philippines, of course, is home to 1,800 higher education institutions that I know of. So for one university to make up 1/10 of the total output is already a significant feat. But what we should also note is not too far from here. If you go to Malaysia or Thailand, the best universities in those countries each produce more than half of what the entire Philippines produces. So or Chulalongkorn would be equivalent to maybe close to 1,000 average Philippine HEIs. So there is certainly plenty of room for improvement for DLSU and for the Philippines collectively as well. And this is not even world-class. This is ASEAN standard. If we were to speak of world-class, maybe top of mind would be Harvard University might be the first one that you think of. And if we were to take the same chart and insert Harvard University, this is what we get. As you can see, maybe a single world-class university like Harvard produces 3 or 4 times as much as the entire Philippines, and maybe 30 times as much as what De La Salle University produces. This is just the volume, and this does not even speak to the quality or influence of their research, because world-class is where world-changing ideas emerge, just like Google and Stanford more than one generation ago. As we aspire to become more of an international presence, we become very aware of our international collaboration footprint. And this heat map provides a picture of where our collaborations occur. Most of them still are within the region, with a bit of a presence, for example, in Central and Western Europe. But we could certainly improve on this in the future. The scholarly impact of DLSU has improved over the years, and in particular, over the past 3 years, we've put strong emphasis on first quartile or Q1 publications, so that we have both volume and quality of research across different disciplines. And the good news is more than half of our publications already occur in Q1 journals, but we have also set targets for the end of the decade, which are very ambitious, but which we expect will bring us up to ASEAN standards at least. And the target is very simple. By 2030, we need, on average, 2 publications per year per full-time faculty member, with 60% of those publications being in Q1 level journals. And we're about halfway there and making incremental but uneven progress. But it is important to have that ambitious target that's a few years down the line. Why is all this important? What's so important about citations when our ultimate goal is to build a better country, a better planet? Well, we do put a premium on research-based policy influence and impact through our different researchers and research centers. But it is the research, it's the knowledge-building part, that discipline, which separates actual scientific ideas from just your own personal opinion. If you didn't have the knowledge and discipline to back it up, then whatever advocacy you have is just an opinion. But if you back it up with discipline and rigor, then it is research-based policy influence and impact. And this is what we're after. And in fact, we put a premium on independently verifiable policy impact. I mean, you could, of course, claim to have made an impact, but it's important to have a paper trail, as in the case of, for example, this biologist colleague of ours who's spent 30 years of his life studying coral reefs and other marine ecosystems. And we do know that there is a paper trail that his work has influenced actual policies, not just in the Philippines, but in different parts of the world as well. And here's one specific example, but there are many more. So let me proceed to my concluding thoughts next. Research is an integral component of higher education, and it contributes to public good through various products, services, even government policies, and even the way we live our day-to-day lives. These are all influenced by research, which very often occurs originally or initially in research laboratories in various universities. And if you have a mobile phone or a device with you now, you have in your hands examples of this kind of impact. To build a research university requires both long-term top-down commitment from a university's leaders, and that means that this kind of commitment is what enables resources to be directed towards an ambitious and potentially difficult goal. But it also requires grassroots or bottom-up support, and that means that not only should there be ambition from the president or the board, but at the front lines, the faculty members themselves, who are going to be the quote-unquote soldiers in this campaign, they're going to need to be committed to this as well, and they need to develop their own personal expertise, their own personal commitment, and their own personal belief that this is a way to make the Philippines and the world a better place, not just education, but research as well. So the focus must come from both directions. And finally, to make this happen, we need to mobilize faculty talent. We need to bring in facilities and to support these activities, and whatever processes that occur to support a university which may not have been optimized for research. They might have been optimized for educational purposes. These need to be studied and updated to be able to make the research transition happen. Right, that concludes my presentation, but I will be happy to have a discussion with you in the coming minutes. In the future, if you feel the need to contact me, please take a snapshot. This is my email address, and of course, a copy of my presentation is going to be made available to all of the participants of this workshop. Thank you once again, and good morning.